So what is up people, welcome to the new video. And as you know, in the last video we have deployed a Node.js application to Google Kubernetes Engine, but we have followed all the manual steps in that. So today in this video we will be deploying the same application to Google Kubernetes Engine, but we will be using another automated way for doing the same. So we will be using Terraform scripts for deploying our deployment, Kubernetes deployment and services, and we will use GitHub Actions CICD workflows so that our approach will be more automated, right? So let's get started. So now first of all, let's go through our directory structure we will be having in our project. So as you can see here, we will have a node tab directory. So in that we will have our application and our Docker file, right? So another directory will be Terraform. In this we will have our Terraform scripts, and the another will be like GitHub. It will be for the workflow, GitHub Actions workflow we will add to automate our whole approach to deploy to Kubernetes, right? So now let's go through what are the Terraform scripts configuration we need to add into the Terraform script. So these are some providers and resources we need to add, right? So which providers we need? So we need Google and Kubernetes provider. So Google provider we need for the creating the GKE cluster, right? Because we need to deploy our application on a GKE cluster, and another provider is Kubernetes. So we need Kubernetes for because we need to deploy our application to using a deployment object on Kubernetes and a load balancer service also, right? So for that we need Kubernetes provider. So what are the resources we need to add into Terraform scripts? So one will be Google Container Cluster, that we already know we need to create a cluster first. So the another will be deployment, right? So Kubernetes deployment object, and another will be load balancer service, right? So using load balancer service we will expose our application for accessing the application externally, right? So I'm inside the VS Code, and here you can see I have two directories here. One is node app, so we need this directory because this contains our application, and another directory is this Kubernetes in which we have our YAML files. So if you watched my last video in which we deployed this application and the load balancer service to GKE, but we followed some manual steps. So for the manual steps we used these YAML files, right? So we will take a reference of these configurations and we will write the Terraform scripts, right? So let's start writing our Terraform scripts. So here you can see the steps. So you can see like first you need to create a Node.js and Express application, so that we already have here. So this application we built in the last video. If you did not watch that, so please go and watch. And another step is we need to write the Docker file for the application. So I already have this Docker file. You can directly see the code, and you can see like how you have to create a Docker file, right? And next steps are like we need to write Terraform scripts. So let's start writing. So first of all, let's create another directory here for, let's call it Terraform only. So because we need to add our Terraform scripts into the Terraform directory itself, right? So we need to create some files for Terraform, one will be main.tf. So let's create main.tf, and another will be providers.tf, right? Providers.tf. So if you go here, you see we need to add two providers here. One is Google and one is Kubernetes. So with Google we need to create Google Container Cluster. So first of all, let's add or write the configuration for creating the Google GKE cluster, right? So in the provider.tf file, let's add a Terraform block. This is the initial block because we are starting our Terraform scripts, and here we can add our core configuration for the Terraform. So I'm saying required version here. Required version, we can say greater than or equal to, let's say 0.12. okay. And another, we need to add backend. So why we need backend? We need to store our state file into some storage, right? Into some remote storage. So we will use GCS because we are using Google Cloud, right? So we will use Google Cloud storage, right? So we will I'm keeping this this resource object blank, right? Why I'm keeping it blank? I will add the configuration on the real time on the pipeline itself, right? So now we need to add the provider. So which provider? We need two providers. So first we need to create the GKE cluster. So let's add Google provider here. So add a provider block here. and let's say Google. And here we need to add two things. One is for project, and we will take the project ID from a variable. Let's call it variable project ID, right? And another will be region. So region will also come from a variable. So this is done. And now we added two variables here, so we need to actually create these variables also. So let's create a variables.tf file, right? So which variables we need to create? Project ID. So just copy it, and let's say variable project ID. We can keep it blank, and another will be region, right? So these two variables I have configured here. That's all right. Now we have added Google provider, and now we need to add the resource block for creating a GK cluster, right? So let's go to our main.tf. So before adding the resource block for Google container cluster, we need to add some other configurations for that. So first one will be data Google container engine version, because we need to add some version inside the cluster. So let's say Google container engine versions, and let's name it default, and here add the location also. So location, what is our zone? Let's add US Central on C. Okay, and another one will be Google client configuration. Okay, so Google client config, let's add it like current. Okay, so now we can keep it blank. We only need some outputs from this data block, and from this we need output, right? So next now it is the main part for the resource. It is Google container cluster. Okay, so it is Google container cluster, and you can name it default, no problem with that. Now here we need to add our main configurations. So first of all, name my first cluster. Okay, location, we will add the same US Center 1C. Okay, now initial node count, we will add, let's say 3 nodes we need. Okay, and minimum master version, here we need to add this. We need the output from this data block. Okay, so data.google container engine versions dot default dot latest master version. All right, let me zoom it a little bit so you can see better. Yeah, so it's here. So now add another object here, not config, and in this add your machine type you need for your nodes. Let's say G1 small. Okay, and add your disk size in GB. Let's say 32 GB we need. Okay, so one thing to note here, if you are using Google Cloud free tier or some free access, so one thing to note here, if you are using free trial of GCP account, so you need to add the same configuration I am adding here. Please don't change this machine type or disk size or anything, or the name, so you can follow the same, right? And here just add your provisioner, and let's name it local execute. So for locally execution we can say when destroy, so it will sleep. We can say add some command here for sleep 90. Yeah, so now our this resource object is done. Okay, so let's create another file. Now we need another provider for Kubernetes, right? So we need to add two providers here. So we have added Google provider. Okay, we have added Google provider, and we have added the resource for Google container cluster. Now we need to add these resources for deployment and load balancer service, right? And so we need Kubernetes provider for that. So let's add that provider here. So just like Google, add another provider block here and name it Kubernetes. We are not naming it, it is Kubernetes. and here we need to add some configurations. So first of all, host. So where we can find our host, Google Container Cluster, because we have created it, right? And we need the endpoint from our cluster, right? And another thing, we need token. So token we will get from Google client config current, and from here we have access token. And another thing, we need client certificate. So we need it in base64 format. And from where we will get this? Google, and let me delete it. We will get the Google container cluster dot default dot master auth 0, because it is an array, so that's why. And add the client certificate here. Okay, and now add into the function base64 decode. Now it's done. So now add here the client key. So for client key, we use the same base64 decode, and just copy this till here, and here add client key. Okay, so another thing, we need cluster CS certificate. It will be also in base64 format, and in this just add Google, just copy it and paste it here. So in here you can see cluster CA certificate. Okay, so our provider block is ready now. So now we need to add some resources for creating our Kubernetes deployment and services, right? So for that, let's create a new Terraform file. Let's name it kubernetes.tf. So in the kubernetes.tf file, first of all, we need to create a resource for like deployment, right? So if you open this deploy.yaml file in which we created a deployment, so here you can see how we have configured these all. So we just need to take the reference of this file and we can write our Terraform scripts. So let's see how. So first of all, adds resource will be Kubernetes deployment. Okay, Kubernetes deployment, and you can like leave it as it is, name, no problem. And now you see here we have API version kind, so we don't need to add these two because we already defined we need to create a Kubernetes deployment. So next field is metadata. So let's add the metadata here. Okay, metadata, and inside metadata we need name, right? Because we already have here, and just copy this, paste it here. Okay, no deployment. And now we need to add some labels. So label should be also inside a dictionary kind of thing. It will be our object, right? And in this, just add your type will be backend. Okay, and app will be node app. So these are the same labels we used in YAML file, but this is in YAML syntax and this is HCL syntax, right? So now we already added the metadata. Now we need to create our specs, right? So let's add a spec block here, and inside this, first what we have here, we have replicas. How many replicas we need, right? So add replicas, we need only one as we have defined here. Add some selector. So in selector we have here the match labels, and so key will be here, and just delete it and copy these labels and just paste them here. Okay, so now what is the next thing? We need to add the template for our pod here. So we have added replica, selector, and now add template. So in the template, first of all, we need to add metadata, right? So what will be into metadata? Name, right? So name will be node app pod, right? So now add your labels here. So we can just copy and paste here these labels. Okay, so I have not added labels here. Okay, yeah, so me remove them from here. Yeah, so now we have added our metadata and labels. So now what we need to add, if you see inside your deploy.yaml file, so you need to add specs here for your template of your pod, right? So add your container. So container will be name, you can add just like this. We have this name node app container, so just copy and paste it here. Okay, so now we need to add our image here. So image, we are not hard coded, we cannot add hard coded image here, so we will take this from variables. Let's name it container image. Okay, now port. So for port, add your container port here. This will be 80 port, right? So this is the configuration for our resource of like deployment object. So now which resource we need to add? We need to add the load balancer services. So deployment is done. Now we need to add load balancer service resource here. So let's open our service.yaml file. Okay, so for service actually we need an IP also, right? So for load balancer service, so let's create a compute address here, resource Google compute address. Okay, you can like leave it as name or default, and let's name it IP for service. Okay, we can name it whatever we like, and for the region we can take it from variable. We have already created this variable, right? So we don't need to add anything more here, this is enough. Now our main resource load balancer service, let's say Kubernetes service, right? So for our service we have the type here. So first of all, let's add the metadata, and the name of our service will be node app load balancer service. So name it, let's name it node app lb load balancer service, right? And the another thing, we need to add specs here. So create a spec block here, and in this we have type. We need to add type for our service. So type will be load balancer, right? And for IP, load balancer IP, we will take the IP from Google compute address.default.address, right? I have added address here. Now we have to define ports. So add port will be 80 and target port will be 80. Okay, now we need to add selector also, right, inside this packs here. Selector, we need to add this block, and what are the selectors here? Just copy and paste these labels. Okay, okay, so it's done now. So we defined a new variable here, that was container image. So let's create this variable also in variables.tf file, container image, and let's create a new file for Terraform for output variables. Let's say outputs.tf, and here we need to add some outputs. So what will be like one output, we can say output cluster name. We can, where we will get it, Google container cluster dot default dot name, right? And another output will be cluster endpoint we need, so that we can access our application, right? So it will be from Google container cluster dot default dot endpoint, right? So another output we need cluster location. From where we will get it? We will get it Google Google container cluster dot default dot location. Okay, so another output will be load balancer service IP address. We can get this as output from where Google compute address dot default dot address. Okay, so these are all output variables we will be needed, and so let's quickly review what we have done. So for providers, we have added two providers, Google and Kubernetes, and in main.tf we have added the resource block for creating our Google container cluster, and in Kubernetes.tf we have added resource block for our Kubernetes deployment for compute address, and one is for Kubernetes service, and it is a load balancer service, right? Okay, so you can name it also, let's say app service. Okay, so now our Terraform scripts are done, and now we can move to our next part, that is for writing a CICD workflow, and we will write using GitHub Actions. So before writing our GitHub Actions workflow, first we need to identify which approach we will be using to authenticate between Google Cloud and GitHub, right? So we will be using OIDC authentication for authenticating to our Google Cloud. So for that we will be using this action for authenticating to Google Cloud inside our CICD workflow, right? So in this we need to pass the workload identity provider and the service account, right? But before adding this to our workflow, we need to configure something in our G Cloud, right? So that it can be authenticated. So these are the steps you need to follow. So first you need to create a workload identity pool, right? And then you need to create an identity provider. Then you obviously have to create a service account, and you need to assign some roles also, so that that are required to deploy your application, right? And then you need to add some IAM policy bindings so that your service account can be authenticated with the repo, with the GitHub repo, right? So this is the like a flow chart, so you can see how this authentication will work. So basically our GitHub Action workflow, basically it directly authenticates with the service account, but it requires a workload identity pool in between. So it basically generates a temporary token, right? So for authenticating with GitHub. And so this is also a graph, so you can see. So let's see what are the steps you need to follow for implementing this authentication, right? So you need to run these commands I have already here. So first you need to create a new workload identity pool, right? So for that you just need to copy this command and just paste it, right? So paste it, and here you need to edit this, and you can add your project ID here. And how you can get your project ID, you just need to go to your console, Google Cloud console, and you can just copy it from here, and we just need to paste it here and just enter. So our workload identity pool is created. Now what is the next step? We need to create identity provider. So we created the workload identity pool, and now we need to create the identity provider. So this is the command for that. In this also we need to add our project ID. So let's add our project ID here. So here you can focus, we are okay. So I did some mistake here. Let me again change the project ID only, and let me copy again my project ID. Let's paste here. Okay, so just enter, and here if you see, my workload identity pool name is Kubernetes pool, and the provider name is Kubernetes provider, right? And now see the next step. You need to create a service account with these permissions. So you can get these all permissions on my GitHub. This you need to assign. So I already have a service account here, tfgk test, and I already provided these roles to this service account. Okay, so now next thing, we need to add the IAM policy bindings. So let's copy this command here and paste it. Okay, so now here you need to do some changes. So in this GitHub repo, you need to add your GitHub repo here. Let me make it a little bit big. So you need to add your repo. So this is my repo, and we need to copy the username and the repo name here. Okay, and now we need to add here the project number, right? So how you can get your project number? You just need to run this gcloud projects describe and your project ID. Okay, let's copy our project ID, and so you can also copy from here. Okay, so if you run this command, you can get all information about your project. So you can see your project number is this one. So you just need to copy it and paste it here instead of this project number. Okay, it is here now. And now what we need to add here, we need to change this GCP project ID, right? And we have our GCP project ID, this one. Let's copy it, paste it here, and now here you need to add your service account email which you have created. Okay, so let's copy the service account email. This is our service account. Let's add it here and just enter. Okay, so now it's created, it's updated the IAM policy. So now what is the next step? Also, yeah, you need to create a GCS bucket for storing your Terraform state file, but I already have created and I added that secret into my GitHub secrets, right? So you need to add these secrets to your GitHub repo. One is GCP project ID, one is GCP TF state bucket. So let me add these two secrets. If I go to settings, how you can get, need to go to secrets, actions. I already have some actions, but some secrets here, but I need to add these secrets. So what are the secrets we need to add? GCP project ID. Just copy it. Okay, and create the new repository secret GCP project ID, and the copy your project ID. So this was our project ID. Add here. Now you need to add your TF state bucket name also. So let me see what was my bucket name. Let me open cloud storage. So I think we need to create a bucket also here. Let me create a bucket. Let's name it Kubernetes Terraform state. Okay, it is already taken. State file. Continue, and let's create it. Now just copy this bucket name and just add here as a secret. Okay, so we have added secrets. Now we can start writing our GitHub Actions workflow, right? So I have this directory here. I can delete it. I don't need it now because I have already my Kubernetes configurations inside our Terraform directory, right? So let's create a new folder .github / inside we need workflows folder, and inside this we can create a workflow file. Let's say deploy.yaml, right? So what will be your deploy.yaml file? Let's see. First of all, we need to add some name here. Let's name it deploy to Kubernetes. Okay, and on which event you want to run this workflow, on push, and specify some branches filters. So what is our branch? Our branch is this one, complete CICD with Terraform and GKE. So add the branch name here, Now you need to add some environment variables for your global workflow. So let's add them. So first environment variable will be GCP project ID, right? And from where we can get this? We have already added the secret for it, right? GCP project ID. And one is TF state bucket name, right? For Terraform state bucket. And we already have this inside our secrets. So that is GCP TF state bucket, right? Now let's write our jobs. And so our only one job will be there is deploy. It will run on Ubuntu latest. Add some environment variables for our job. Let's say image tag. Why image tag? We need to add some image tags in our Docker image, right? So github.sha. And now we need to add some permissions here because we are using the OIDC authentication methods, right? So you need to specify these permissions here. So contents read and ID token, because it will generate a token, right? Now we can start writing our steps for our workflow, right? So for the steps, first step will be checkout, right? We need to check out our repo inside the GitHub runner, right? So what was the actions checkout? You can see version 3 of it. And the another one was this one, right? We need to authenticate with GCP. So let's add it here. I think there is some indentation error. Okay. And how you can do, let me change it. Okay, now it's correct. Just add one more input here, token format, and it will be access token. Okay, all things are fine. Now we need to change here something. Okay, what we need to change? We need to change this complete work, this project number. We need to change it. So if you remember, we have identified our project number. So this was our project number. So just paste it here, and now see pool. We need to add what was name our pool, Kubernetes pool, and provider was Kubernetes provider, right? And now we need to add the service account here. What was the service account? So this one. So for some best practices, I can say you don't add this project ID here. Instead of, we already have the environment variable of GCP project ID, so we can add GCP project ID here. So it will fetch it from the secrets because we already have it defined here, GCP project ID, GCP from secrets, right? So now what will be the next? We need to set up gcloud CLI. Okay, so how you can do that? You just need to add a action that is pre-built action by Google. So it is set up gcloud version 1. You just need to have that, and now we have to authenticate it with Docker. So let's name it Docker auth, and we need to run a command that will be gcloud auth configure Docker, right? Now we need to build our image and we need to push that to GCR, right? So let's say build and push Docker image. Oh, okay. And what we need to run? We need to run multi-line script. See, first we need to build our image. So Docker build and tag it by this flag /tag t /it .gcr.io, and this will be GCP project ID, and slash our name of our image, let's say node app image. Okay, and image tag we already added as an environment variable, image tag. So we have tagged it, and we build it. So now we need to push the image. Just need to run the git docker push command and copy this and just paste it here, so it will be pushed, right? And one thing also to note here, we need to run this command inside a working directory, that is node app, because our docker file is inside the node app directory, right? So now our image is built and pushed. So now what we need to do, we need to deploy this application or this docker image on Kubernetes, right? So for that we need to use Terraform, right? So first of all we need to set up or install Terraform inside our GitHub runner. So we can use already built action by HashiCorp, that is set up Terraform, and we can use that version 2 of that, right? So now next, what we will do for deploying an application or deploying some resources using Terraform, we just need to run Terraform commands, Terraform init, plan and apply, right? So first let's say Terraform init and run Terraform init, and in this we need to add some backend configuration for our storing our state file. So add your bucket name here. Bucket will be, we already have this as environment variable, tf state bucket name. So just paste it here and add also a prefix also here. Okay, so backend config, this will be prefix. Second, backend config prefix will be, let's say Kubernetes. Okay, this is fine, and this will run inside a working directory, that is Terraform, right? Because we have our Terraform scripts inside this Terraform directory, right? So now we need to run the Terraform plan command, and we can pass our variables also there, right? So let's name it Terraform plan and just run Terraform plan command, and let's keep it a multi-line script. So Terraform plan and add variable here. So our variable was like project ID, region and container image, right? So add region will be, we can add here US Central 1. Okay, and another variable was project ID, so that is as an environment variable we have already defined. So GCP project ID, and another variable is container image, right? So container image URL we already have here, just copy and paste it. Okay, and just out it as plan so that we can apply this plan, right? So now add your Terraform apply step and let's run Terraform apply plan, right? And also we forgot one thing, to specify the working directory, right? So specify here the working directory Terraform and specify here also. That's all right, and so our workflow is ready here so we can deploy. So how we need to do it, and we just need to push it now. Okay, so just add these all things there. Where is the, okay, now let's say Kubernetes deployment commit, and let's commit it and push it. So our workflow is triggered here. If you see, it's running, it has authenticated to gcloud, so it will take some time to complete this pipeline. So let's wait for that. Okay, so there's some error in this. Let me check. Flag, shorthand flag IT, you have added. Okay, so I have not added a dot here because we want to build our image and in the current directory, so there was an error. Okay, let me change it quickly. Dot, and now let's commit it again. Yeah, and now it's triggered again. Okay, it is saying we have added this IT flag. Okay. So I have added something quite wrong here. It should be only T, right? It not should be IT, because we want to tag only. We don't want interact terminal. That's right. So let me change again, and so now it is working, right? So now all steps are done, and now it's running the Terraform apply and it is creating the infrastructure. So it will take some time. So let's wait for that. And as you can see, now it's deployed and our complete action is triggered. It ran successfully, right? So if you see here, you can see cluster endpoint load balance IP as output. So just need to we can copy this load balancer IP and just paste it in our browser, right? So you can see our application is deployed and it's saying server is up and running. So our application is completely deployed with the load balancer service, right? So if you like this video, please hit the like button and do subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.